everyone, and welcome to the 20th anniversary special podcast for the Icehouse. Today's conversation is all about reminiscing over the last 20 years at the Icehouse. That is very significant. I'm Bryar Stewart, the community manager at the Icehouse, and today we have some Icehouse legends, I like to call them, sitting on the couch having a conversation about the highs, the lows, the challenges, the fun, and all the things in between. And so I thought, why don't we go around the couch and introduce yourself and your involvement in the Icehouse. And it's only fitting if we start with David Irving.
With the old man here. David Irving, founder of the Icehouse, or one co-founder of the Icehouse with others. That's me.
Awesome.
Kia ora koutou, I'm Chris Woods, and I've been with the Icehouse since it was water, and that's as good as my jokes get. So I've been a facilitator on the owner-manager program since the very first owner-manager program, and my involvement came about from working as an academic at the University of Auckland Business School.
Amazing.
Hi, I'm Raewyn Goodwin. I'm Customer Relationship Partner, and I've had the pleasure of being involved with the Icehouse right from the start, and I can actually say I have met every single owner manager that has done that program, so it's been a privilege.
Camp mother she is. Kia ora, my name is Andy Hamilton. I was the first CEO of the Icehouse from 2001 until 2020, and then I finally retired from that role. So it's great to be here.
Hi, Liz Wotherspoon. I am the head of growth for the Icehouse, a role that I've had for 15 years. My actual initial introduction to the Icehouse, however, came as one of the directing team on Owner Manager Program 8, which was a couple of years before I joined the organisation in the role that I'm now in.
Awesome. So as you can tell, Icehouse legends here from the start. It's really important that we also mention Deb Sheperd, that's not able to be here today, and Darl, who's also not able to be here today, but here from the start, and really significant people from the beginning. But let's start. First things first, let's cast our minds back. Does anyone have any funny or interesting stories from the early days at the Icehouse?
What about the story before? Everyone thinks it started in 2001, David. Did it start in 2001?
Well, ideas take a while to get into place. I don't know. I have no recollection really of the time, but I mean my moment, I suppose, was when I left Watties, and first place I walked to. I can't believe it really. It's so unusual. I think I walked down the road to the bloody university. You know, why do you do that? And I've learned over the years that it's something to do with the fact that I'm interested in learning, and that took me to a connection that I started to see these things called SMEs, which I've talked about for years, and then
Good old Barry Spicer.
Barry Spicer he'd been thinking about the lack of connection with the town, distances between universities and their audience, their membership, and they needed to get closer. This was seen as something that we could do that got us closer. That was right. And then of course Bridget Liddell, Bridget Coates, her interest in startup in the Knowledge Wave conference and all of that activity, and we just got some energy going really. And the thing I love about what's happened is that in my case, I just went and saw this lovely lady beside me, Chris, and then I Deb, who I'd met at the university, and I didn't for a second wonder. I still pinch myself about this. Didn't for a second wonder whether I had the right people.
So how did you know to get Deb and Chris in terms they were in difficult?
They're the only two that were open. No, they weren't. They just got it.
Deb had asked me to talk on a couple of the programs in class, and Chris, I'm not sure.
Marie Wilson.
And
Barry.
Wilson.
So between them.
Yeah, and Barry, and just from the moment, I don't know that I really didn't ask Chris for a CV or anybody for a bloody CV, but I just must have felt known that you were right for it. And I mean, then they called themselves Kolb Spud, which I reckon. I mean, Kolb, Deb from the coast, and Spud, Chris from up here at Pukikoe. So there was a real sort of, because it needs to be humour with owner managers, Raewyn, doesn't it?
But that with Kolb Spud, that became because of another connection, which wasn't that Mike Hutchinson came up with that name for you guys? Hutchinson.
And when we were we were a couple of years in on working on the program, Deb and I, and we went out. Boozy lunch at Chibo's, which is always a good idea.
He likes a long lunch.
And he asked us for different ideas, and we said, well, we work with owner managers and it's a journey program and we're thinking about Odyssey, and he went, oh God, that's so boring. That's so not you. And then he asked us about our background and what our story was, and I think that's one of the things I've loved about working, particularly for me working on the program over 20 years is having the privilege of sharing the stories that the owner managers have. And, with family businesses, some of these stories are, 100, 150 years long, our agri programs.
But do you remember day one?
Yes, so
you
day
do.
one. So if I think about day one.
Day one, 19 people in the room.
I go back to September 2000, and that's the first time we sat in a room. We sat in a room with David, and there were a few others in there, and we had a blank sheet of paper, and it's not often you really get a blank sheet of paper. And there were a couple of things that David brought in, and one was the idea that this is over a period of time, so it is a journey, that it was residential, and then we were out of Auckland, and then we got pieces of paper up, and then we went down to Short Street, and we had a few meetings down there, and we started mapping out, and we got our 5 blocks. And we kind of loosely had themes for them, and then we kind of continued those conversations, and as a lot of us academics do, you're having these lovely conversations, and then bloody hell, it's August.
This is for real.
We're doing the first program in August 2001, and we're down at Hotel Devane, and we kind of knew what we were doing, but we
just one little step ahead of everyone.
And they were so bullshit.
But they were amazing. I think that first group, every group has been a gift, and I know that's a bit kind of to say it, but every group. I mean, I still drive out on the first day, and we're on UMP 50 or UMP 53, and I'm going, how bloody lucky am I, to work with. Well, yeah, but I think I get to work with Deb and that's 20 years, and that's just fantastic. I get to work with Liz, and that's and you and David, and so I still get that. But driving out there, so it was at Hotel Devane. For me, that was really good because it's only 15 minutes up the road from where I live, and you just walk in, and sometimes that naivety is a bloody good thing. Sometimes knowing what you don't know, but occasionally knowing, not knowing what you don't know. And they were a real gift, because in that journey we started to shift and work some things out. And I think one of the realizations that I got, and it was at the end of the program, and we're having our final night celebration. We had Len the Loser, so that made it a fantastic celebration, and we had certificates, and on the certificates was the Icehouse logo and the University of Auckland Business School logo. And when you go round with these men and Vicky, a lot of them kicked out of school when they were 14, 15, 16. And I can remember one of these amazing men, incredibly successful, like seriously successful. And he was in tears because he had a certificate with the university logo on it. And that, because there is a little bit of imposter syndrome that comes through with a lot of our owner managers. There shouldn't be. They're amazing. And so to see that, to validate, and I at that point I thought, never underestimate what I bring in as an academic. So ironically, these men and women over the years, some of them have gone to uni, but a lot haven't. They validated who I was as an academic.
We had it in Australia with one of the first cohorts in Australia. They actually wanted to wear cap and gowns, and the university over there wouldn't let them, and so they went to a costume hire place. and hired, cap and gown.
Yeah,
For the
yeah.
same reason, though, they're getting a certificate that has, a university seal on it, and for many of them, and they wanted pictures taken of them with the certificate so they could give it to their parents.
Yet we did know that we couldn't hold this as a program within a university.
No.
So as much as that they liked the sense of being recognised by they wouldn't go.
So the interesting
You're right.
thing, a couple of things I think about that first morning of the owner-manager program. One was, it actually wasn't 3 months in the making. It was 2 years in the making when the idea came up. Two, the 19 people that were there because of the BNZ. Because of that moment that David had that pitch where old Nobby Paul Clark's said, we're in. Well, it was a contest with Westpac and BNZ. And so we had those people that, by the way, paid 1/15th of what people pay now. and it was there and it was real. The other image I've got in my mind was, so I started in June 2001, was day one in the incubator downstairs, and me looking into this massive room with Bridget, and Bridget going, there you go, there's your premises. And I was just like, right, this is empty. What am I going to do here? How am I going to fill it? Well, I better get some humans, And actually, I think about the partners like Direct Capital and Carter Holt Harvey, who committed to taking space that gave us the ability to put humans around, so it looked like there was something there.
But also, Direct Capital, Carter Holt Harvey, they also gave us speakers and presenters to come down, and with probably not the best of briefings at the start, and they were willing to pitch in because they believed in the owner managers, that we had on the program, and kind of came into.
And BNZ still does. Wednesday morning, tomorrow morning of this week is the third block of a program, and BNZ will be there to do a session.
But another thing from the, because knowing this was coming, I've had a whole couple of weeks. I've done some
You
thinking.
should write an article about it.
What a good idea. So we had our first block, and we had these conversations, and then what we always do on the second block is we go around the room and check in. And both Deb and I and other facilitators, we'd worked on MBAs, on MBA programs with a lot of corporates. And we came in, and then we started going around the room, and as we went round, it was going, well, got rid of my CFO. And we're like, well, last block, you said it was a good idea to get rid of the CFO. Then there was somebody else going, well, I know I'm not the right person to run this business, so I basically put my chair on my desk, and I've moved out, and I'm working from home. And
do you remember who that is, David? Do you remember?
I do remember that. I was that was the first time I think we all were astonished that they were listening to us. And
quickly they do stuff.
And then they were doing something about,
quickly.
But I mean, that first program, that is, we've been sort of saying, that we were very big characters in that
huge
program.
characters, big personalities.
That came about, as Andy said, because they wouldn't have come if the bank hadn't paid. They were already, had money in their pocket. Yes. They were quite well established, but they had such a presence. So in the middle of it all, Graham Catley is sort of saying, I'm just going to raise 50 million. Well, shit, you're in the room, and then, because they were all such big fellas, they say, the other one wanted to say, well, I'm actually raising 60 million. Oh, shit, I'll get 100. They were sort of like that. They were full of it.
Yeah.
And the chicken, and then, of course, we had one who was, I think he had a period in prison. So we had them all.
Not there,
really.
after.
Later. After we educated him.
Actually, funny
he crossed the line somewhere.
For a period of time, the marketing team, not the current marketing team, the past marketing team used to talk about 18 people on Owner Manager 1. And I always used to go, there's one extra.
And another thing I do remember is when we did the check-in at the final session on the program to ask what they felt they got from the program. So understanding that these were, big characters, really successful businesses, there were two themes that came through which have stayed again over 20 years. And one was back to basics. So often when they often know what we're talking about, but it's kind of at the back of their head, it's putting it into practice. And the other one was confidence. So, and those things I think have continued over the subsequent programs. And the other one is, as often as we can, get a winery on a program.
Or chocolate.
Or chocolate.
Yeah,
Wine and chocolate are the best combo.
So Raewyn, your part.
What do you
see?
remember?
See the thing about Raewyn.
Human
is
CRM.
she brings not only just stunning relations, but she brings humour. Because we haven't got it, you see. We're struggling to find it.
You've heard my joke.
But
joke.
Somehow, Raewyn, you brought in Len the loser.
Oh, yes.
And that was such a gift to the
But that was one of the...
Rest in peace.
Yes, yeah.
Tell us about it, yeah.
Well, that was a result of one of the participants. Because we were going to have a business speaker, and Adrian said, "Hey, you know, I know this person. He was actually a finalist in Battle of the Bands many years ago, and you should look at getting him." So we got him, and this man turned up, and he turned up in a swan dry, and he looks like a loser, and he's one of those that you'd walk past and you completely, you know, you wouldn't even notice him. Even when he came to reception, like, oh, he's that odd man there. But anyway, he'd come in and he'd start up with Life of Brian. Always look on the bright side of life. I can still remember.
We could all sing
some
that,
of
couldn't
his,
we?
Yeah, some of his jokes. I was an only child, but I was never my mum's favourite.
He's remarkable, and you know, like one of the most beautiful stories about that is that on the startup side, we invested in a business called Jude, and the founder of Jude is a guy called Ben Lynch. And after we invested in that business, Ben said, "Actually, Len's my dad. Kevin's my dad." And you know, I actually speak to Ben now almost every single day.
Wow, that's wonderful.
And it's the most beautiful connection.
Yeah.
Because he came to the Icehouse with all this love from his dad's experience of coming to all those programs.
Len was part of the team.
He was part of
he
the
was
team.
very much a part of the
Raewyn
team.
didn't always have such good luck with the entertainers.
Yeah. Tell us about some of those entertainers, Winnie.
What about the women in the ponchos, Raewyn?
Well, the women in the ponchos, someone had recommended them, and I flew them in from Wellington down to Terrace Downs, and they arrived, and I was in reception with a beautiful Jude, who's just Madonna-like, and you know, David's wife, and then I hear these women, they're like, "We're here for the entertainment," and I turn around, and oh my God, and they were in homemade ponchos, and had obviously knitted themselves. And they turned up, and it was like being at a, I don't know what the fifth form is, what's that year, whatever it is now. It was like some sort of, it was like some 11, you know, performance. It was
Was that when one of the participants said that it might be a career-limiting move?
Yeah, he did. The man said to me, "I think this could be a career-limiting move." Well, actually, I was quite concerned about to that point when he said that, and I just laughed my socks off and thought, well, I can't do anything about
But
it.
the thing I love about that evening, so we've
We
got this,
took over, didn't we?
It's this formal evening, and I'm crying because they're so bad. Some of the participants thought I was like, it was. And then one of the Australian participants, he is an auctioneer, so he got up and he got their song book and he tried to auction it off, and then different participants came up and did different things, and they just basically took over, and it was just one of the best evenings.
Yeah.
Oh, that's brilliant.
And we won't mention that other one that made it to the news.
No.
we won't mention that.
Okay.
I don't even remember because I'm so old, but I'm younger than all of you.
And you have to talk to us personally about that, and we'd love to share that story.
Yeah, right.
That's awesome.
Bry's trying to get to the second point.
Yeah,
Otherwise,
that's
we're here
it.
for 4 hours.
So we're talking about new people that sort of joined onto the founding team. How did the team dynamic change over the years as new people started in the journey?
Well, can I just say that Raewyn's the reason that I'm actually here, because when these guys, Chris and Deb, started to think we might need a couple other people to be on the directing team.
Succession
if we're going to be more than one program a year, we might.
No one's going to be here longer than 10 years.
Maybe give it 5.
So they went to Raewyn and said, do you know anyone? And of course, we go way back.
Yeah.
Previous life worked together, and so that's where my journey
I know you
began.
pre being a grandma.
Yep, pre being a mum.
Mum. Yeah, mum and grandma.
So yeah, and then of course these two who could sell ice to Eskimos convinced me a couple of years later that maybe I should come into the tent more formally.
So what was that dynamic like? Liz walks into the room. Well, Andy, any thoughts?
Oh, she's a wonderful, warm personality that just gets in and knows people, and
Totally.
yeah, it's been fantastic.
Really? Yeah, so look, the answer I think to that is and the secret has been that for Liz already knew what the Icehouse was about before she started as an employee. She already got the purpose, she already got the passion for our customer and the people, and so it was seamless.
Awesome.
Right? Even Raewyn, hey, one of the great gifts David and I will joke about is two things from Raewyn. The first is the university continued to pay her for quite a long time
Until I changed that.
they were such an amazing partner. They supported that. Yeah. And the other is number 2705. You won't remember that, but that was the account code at the university for photocopying.
Until we got discovered.
But back in the day, everything was full colour, glossy, amazing.
It was all
Bells,
legit.
whistles.
Because Barry would say to me every now and then, Andy, you seem to spend a lot of money on photocopying last month. He said, don't worry, I'll tell you when we need to switch it to your own account. I'm like, okay, Barry.
Oh, awesome. That's so good.
But I think Andy makes a good point with Liz coming in, because she'd facilitated on a program and she's a gifted facilitator and understands the participants. That gives such kind of a rich understanding of a key part of the Icehouse.
Yeah.
And I think the program has shifted, but it's still essentially the same.
Yeah.
But it's kind of different. And I think each time we have new facilitators come in, they add to that. They bring something new in to weave into that into that journey.
And I think fundamentally there's something about when you bring a new facilitator in, look at Darl, now this year Derek, they come in with such respect for who's in the room and know that there's something really special that was created originally with the way the program was going to be structured, and you don't waste a lot of time trying to figure out what the magic is. You just get in.
I think the other thing with this is that everything was breakable.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is there was no control thesis. We actually had to get on with each other because Chris was not
and most of the time we did.
No, Chris wasn't an employee, Deb wasn't an employee, so you had choice. I think the other thing is putting the owner-manager and the startups at the heart of everything we did. It was all about them and the environment that we created. And I think for all of us who've been there that long, actually they gave us the greatest gift. Of course we gave them gifts, but the richness and the enjoyment and the experience that we got was such a privilege to see them grow over time.
And you still do, like sitting on a couch on Friday night between two participants on 54, and I was just looking at the living room full of them and going, this is pretty cool. These guys didn't know each other from a bar of soap a month ago. And it's you wouldn't have, you walk in the room
24 hours.
Exactly.
Yeah.
On the very first program, or walk into a Koru club. Walk into and there's some or participants from all over.
They're they're just seemingly terribly real. The people who've owned and managed their own businesses. It is so distinct from a corporate manager. And
you've always been clear about that. We've been clear about that, and who are.
We've got it, I think, and it helps us to appreciate who they are. They're self-made. They didn't somehow just get a lot of money and get a great start in life. They've had to start usually from, well, okay, what'll I do? Or they might have had enough money to borrow a bit and then buy something. But they've just got this lovely persistence and there's a determination, and there's a vulnerability, bloody big vulnerability actually.
And
The 3 circles for us was a
Some of them.
stunning gift
That-
that the
yeah.
girl, Deb and Chris, came up with that really connected yet disconnected. That was extremely helpful, I think, in helping us to know what we were there to do to provide for. And I think personally, as a person from corporate life, and had a lot of fun in my corporate life too, actually a lot of fun. But there's something about their circumstances and who they are.
There is, but here's the interesting thing. What Bryar asked about. I think because we had this incredible purpose that drove us, also when we brought new people in, we had some screw-ups, but you never stop to question or deny. You just go, we got that wrong, let's get the next person. And let's just learn, let's just keep getting people, let's give them feedback. I mean, I remember a lot of the panelists that we brought in from the corporate would sit down and tell the owner-managers the answer. And we're like, that's what you might do in a corporate, but you don't do that to self-made people. And we just had to learn. And then they got it.
And we still do. We try new people in the program all the time, and some of them get it, and some of them don't.
I think the picking up on David's point, that idea that they pay their own wages.
Yeah.
You know, we all earn our wage, but we don't all pay our own wage. You know, it's not that you've got to make sure all of your team is paid, because otherwise, before you get paid, you know, but most of us don't have to think about that. So I think that kind of the unsung hero.
They're always, look, 9 out of 10 of them almost are on a wage for themselves that's well less than the market value.
Oh yeah, easy.
They just don't pay themselves the amount of money that they're due for the job they do. They go down here, so they discount themselves.
And the responsibility they feel for whole communities.
Yeah.
You know, and particularly in some of the regions across New Zealand. You know, they'll be a significant employer, and that responsibility to their team and to the community.
We've even had an owner-manager from Chatham Islands.
Oh yeah, yeah, Val.
Yeah, we really covered the whole.
And I think
Even Australia.
This sort of takes us to the agri program.
Do you remember that?
Yes.
Wasn't that just, why don't you tell that story around how that came about? Remember snow?
Well, Andy's got a great memory for moments, I think, probably better than me. I'll give you the general story. You pitch in with it. But I when I thought about who are we trying to reach, I thought to myself, well, what's the backbone of our country? And then I thought, who's more alone than the owner managers that we've got? And so it went to a farmer. And I mean, we all know farmers, and they're in their own right people. They have to be, because they lean only on themselves, and so they more than anyone, we needed, I felt, to give a chance to sort of connect with lots of others. They have farming groups. That they love a farming group.
Discussion.
They love going on each other's farms. You know, all of that. They love their dogs. You know, whistle up the bloody dog. You know, get him on. You know. and Fred Dagg made great humour on them, and they are funny. You know, but they're vulnerable. And we ran it for 7 years or so, and it was a terrific experience. It's a great pity to all of us that it's not still alive. There was one program running in Australia that was a sort of competition that we thought of. But for as long as I'm around, I'll keep promoting. You know, we should do this. We shouldn't be put off.
12
ever.
owners from New Zealand, 12 owners from Australia.
Yeah, that's Andy.
Joined.
Thank you for that.
Trans-Tasman.
The beauty of Trans-Tasman. The beauty of
Really good.
you know, Andy knows I'm a big promoter of Australia. Liz is connecting the two, the Kiwis and the Aussies together. Magic.
And again, Winnie was legend in terms of getting that all organised, you know, running the logistics. But I do have to share one story. So we're busy flying across the first block. We're going to, you know...
Because you've got a good lot of credibility for farmers, right? Because you've got sheep.
Yeah, I've got 2 sheep and 2 kuni pigs and 5 chickens. But
Niche
I
market.
am the daughter of a farmer. So farmers always try and throw in the, oh, look, this is a bit, you know... If they had homework or anything to do, you know, I'm just a dumb farmer, and it's just like, well, father, uncle, grandfather, cousins, all farmers, not one of them dumb. So don't even try that. So we're on the flight going over, and Raewyn hasn't met everybody, but we're going over and she's in charge of logistics. And then next thing there's an announcement over the from the flight attendants about somebody that's lost their passport.
Oh, really?
And I'm
They
like,
found it,
who's lost their passport? And then they gave the seat number and I went, she found it though.
But it was a moment that they didn't know if it would have been on the other side, and I'm like, oh, this is not a good look when you're doing the logistics and there's these farming people you've never
But
met.
it's wonderful because that gave us the chance. The logistics is a nice segue because we did go across the ditch and alternate between Australia and New Zealand with the agribusiness program. But what it taught us was we could move a program around.
Yeah.
And so an owner manager program now, one a year at least, is not based all in Auckland, which is great, and we can manage the logistics of that. And now the program in Australia, is run, all the way there, and we continuously think about how we might go trans-Tasman again. And I think what's great, David, is when the agri guys kind of started to appear on the owner manager program, and we knew that they were kind of looking for an opportunity to do what we do, but not necessarily do it with just land-based businesses. We see probably 2 or 3 in every program, at least agribusiness owners, and it's pretty cool.
Because we try, coming back to Andy's point, we didn't always get everything right. I mean, we tried to run a South Island program and we ran that once.
With Otago Uni, remember?
Yeah, and that didn't play out. It was still
Remember Moving On?
Amazing.
That was a great program, Moving On.
It was, but
We had 11 people we had 11 people on the program.
and then we moved on.
And then they wanted to grow their businesses. It was about succession. And they were like, nah, I'm going to grow my business. That was perfect. We never ran that again, did we?
Precursor to exit and succession. Didn't go down real well when you tell your people that you're going on a program called Moving On.
Hey, that's a genius marketing moment, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I think I named it as usual. I mean, it just seemed absolutely the right descriptor, but we struggled to make that work. That's another work in progress in my mind, because I just know that we all know that people getting to that stage are very vulnerable, and they become very unsure of themselves. And what are they going to do? And they, even if they haven't thought about it before they sell it, and then suddenly, shit, I got nowhere to go on Monday.
But it is easy in hindsight to say that niching a niche is challenging, right?
Yeah.
And niching a niche, and also that's a topic that's harder to do one-to-many.
Yeah.
Because so quickly you get to a unique situation. And so if we can have good conversations now as part of our one-to-one engagement, or one-to-fewer, it works a little bit better. And so that's the beauty, I think, of the journey we've been on, going from moment in time to kind of journeying with our customers over time. And of course, that took us into the leadership development program. And
yes, that's right. I mean,
so
we started that in 2006.
How many
2006.
LDPs have been done now?
44th is running right now.
Yeah, and that came from, that program came from the owner managers saying they wanted something for, members of their...
Is that what we told you? I was just like, I need to grow this business and make more profit. So, do you think I actually had a noble cause there?
I like the purpose behind it. I like the why.
Yes.
No, they did. They said if we're going to work more on and not in, then we have to delegate to competence, and that means raising the, lifting.
It's pretty funny though, because if you think about it, the owners were like, my staff, I've got it, and my staff don't get it.
Yeah.
And then we put leaders on programs, and they used to go, oh, I get it, but my owner is such a prick.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay, going from more of a full journey perspective, were there any standout memorable moments for you guys?
What about Deb
many.
breastfeeding?
No.
Well, there's nothing wrong with that. She had 2 beautiful boys.
Well, I think for, if you think about, now when you think about 20 years, so for Deb, her 2 boys, my 2, your grandchildren, your girls going through high school, so...
And now I have a grandson.
And all of... But that's a journey that all of our participants were going on as well. Yeah. And I think that's the thing that I've really, really loved, again, is that, just sharing part of that journey, but also too, when there were those kind of, because the 3 circles, one of the circles is the you. And, and having the Resilience Institute and Sven come in to, to give kind of
Nice.
world class
Gee.
Yeah.
kind of conversations around this opened up, because it's bloody lonely. That was the thing, that it's really lonely out there, and so they were able to then share amongst themselves. It didn't need us if it was a family or issues or mental health challenges or physical, so they could then share those. And so some of those moments are pretty awesome.
And it happens time and again, that sense of how personal this is, and how safe they feel sharing the good stuff, and celebrating that with all of us, as well as the more challenging things.
That enables different kind of different groups to help and share. And now with technology, you read through a WhatsApp, and I was reading through a WhatsApp conversation with somebody that's going through quite a shitty time, and all of the support that's just pouring in for them from other participants, and so it keeps going.
I just think that it was, when I reflected on it for today, it is never one event. It was a whole series of every single program was like, just when you sat there at the end of the graduations, and it's just a remarkable series of events in their lives. And then post that, when you would go around New Zealand and meet them and visit them and just hear those stories, and the privilege that it was for all of us. Of course, I remember in the life, I think it was 10 years, 2011, when we did, I think it was Ice Ideas, and I could have this wrong. When we had Peter Thiel, and we had all those speakers, we had that 600 people at the university.
That was
Amazing.
And I think that came about though because people were saying, all this cool stuff you're doing, what does it all mean? And then we tried to do that back at the envelope. What is the impact on the economy? Oh, let's dream to have a 10% impact on GDP. That led to Ice Ideas. That we tell our owners to push out in front of their skis, to get uncomfortable, and that's part of the learnings that we've all had, is that we've had to learn that. We've had to learn how to have a sales culture. Did you know that Raewyn can sell? Who would know? I remember her crying, saying, "You cannot make me sell." And
You
I
didn't
said,
frame it well.
"I believe you. I believe you can sell, Raewyn."
I had to frame it better.
But mine's all relational. I'm not a salesperson.
Yes,
but
you
it
are.
is- Yeah, I am now.
Yeah, but you get what the relationships do.
When you believe in something.
Oh, totally. It
It's
is
not
about
hard,
believing it.
isn't
Yeah,
it?
that's right. Believing in the product and the people. And
Imagine going to work not believing in something.
oh no.
You'd retire.
So
You're at that retirement age.
Where's my
You
car
talk
when
about
I
what's
retire?
changed, and this is still changing. I think people still say to me, how many women do you have on the programs? And my answer still remains not enough.
Not enough.
But pretty darn cool when and we've got 5 on one of the programs that's running right now. So again, is that enough? No. But on another one, we have a young woman who's the mother of 4 children under 6, and family, husband and other family, are looking after the 6-year-old, the 4-year-old, the 2-year-old, and she has her 9-month-old with her on program.
Amazing.
So not in the classroom or not in the room, but at the venue. And let me tell you, that child is getting plenty of attention.
Look after the baby?
Baby is being looked after by one of our alumni businesses, Rock My Baby, who is providing the nanny that allows her to kind of be there. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think Andy, you'll remember from the early days, I seem to be always promoting further opportunities. So I was more, but just because I believed, So we remember the professionals.
Yeah. Professional owner manager.
Who's going to be on their own?
Yes,
Professionals are going to be on their own. Why professionals? Well, they're no good at business. They're so busy doing their own profession, they don't think about the business aspect of it. The doctors, we thought of being on their own. How can we reach them? Women, we talked about a 5 till 7 program that came at the end of a day. Probably the bloody most stupid time that we could have suggested, with a mother with children to go home from, but we thought end of work, that's what they could come to. But so that there's a massive connection that still can be made. It's just a matter of how we design it and make it work for them. But there are plenty of people on their own.
Well, it's interesting.
Unsure of themselves.
Yeah, because taking your business forward is a perfect example of that.
Yeah.
So
That was-
in lockdown, what are we? When you're fundamentally an organization that brings people together. let's fast forward and get something virtual on, and we did it. 50% of the participants on that program
Female.
are women.
Yeah.
50%.
Great response.
So 9:30 to 11, kids are already at school, or care is in place,
Yeah.
and it's virtual,
Yeah.
and
Perfect.
which is exciting.
I do have one memory. Oh,
No, go
sorry,
for it.
you asked about and
Yeah, go for
So
it.
I can remember we were on an agribusiness program over in Australia, and a guest speaker had come in, and within 30 seconds, you know that this is just terrible. He's there for an hour and a half, and it's just awful. And you kind of, you're at the back of the room as a facilitator, and there was 3 of us facilitating on that program. The wonderful Bill Malcolm from
Oh yeah, Bill
from
Malcolm. Gee.
the
Nicholas
amazing
Shadbolt.
Nicholas
Shadbolt,
Shadbolt
Nicholas
from Massey
Shadbolt,
Uni. So sitting at the back, and I'm just in a cold sweat, and bless the participants, within 5 minutes, they are trying to help him. So it finished early. We ended up only going for an hour because he kind of realised. But it was just one of those moments where the generosity, you know, they paid to be on this program, and it doesn't happen often, but every now and again,
You wish you had a hook.
you just go.
So my special, one of my special moments, because there are hundreds really, but it's, I don't know how you ladies came to do this, but it must have been in your decision. Let's have the last program, the last block at the Hilton in town.
Oh my gosh.
Wouldn't that be a good idea?
it's
Because we've been at Hotel Devane.
But it got
so
bought
they need
out.
to be able to connect. So
It
we.
got bought out.
closed.
Well, okay. Oh, you're giving it a reason, so you chose the Hilton.
Yes, we are.
So
We're
you
giving
went
it- it's the only
downtown,
place.
Auckland, and I had no awareness of this other than I had to turn up at the Hilton. So I turned up at the Hilton as a panelist.
Were you at the right time?
Yes, he was.
On the right day?
He was with me that day.
Because there's been a few times where you've turned up at the wrong time.
He was at the right time. We were together that day. I was your internal panelist to my yes.
And what happened? Come on.
Go ahead.
I started to sort of sense that I could smell the alcohol. That's what it was. I could smell it. It was beer. It was a lot of beer. And a couple of them were not just bloody, there was a sort of a hungover look on 3 of them, and they were still going. 1 or 2 of them. And I just said, look, I was bloody cross.
I've never seen you were cross.
I was bloody cross. This is your chance. This is your business. We're really. This is the most important day, most valuable part.
Yeah.
And you're treating it like this. Oh boy, it was just a disaster.
You know, David,
That's
but
the
that
first time I've ever
reflection,
seen David like
but that reflection, which is pretty interesting, is that we didn't know much when we started. And over the 54 programs, we've got more and more confident about the content, about the format, and become more and more confident in ourselves around what is right behaviour, what is wrong behaviour. And I think that's one of the really special things is that our velocity of caring for these people on the program to give them the greatest opportunity, you know, because we're not telling them what to do. We're not telling them how to run their business. We're creating that opportunity. This is the thing I love, because when the first OMP1 people pushed back on things like business plans, we allowed them to not.
Yeah.
Whereas now, we don't tell them they have to do it, but we give them all the tools, all the opportunity to take that.
And we'll tell them what they miss, the opportunity they'll miss if they don't.
And I think too, it stands out because it just happens so, you know, I mean, that's a one-off, but also our idea of being out of the city, being at residential venues, and we've been really fortunate
No bright lights.
with some of the venues that, you know, whether it was out at Hotel Devane and Northridge and out at Waitakere and that, you know, we've been really fortunate in having good venues and good support.
Do you think we should have bought Hotel Devane?
Yes.
Or Northridge.
Yes, we should have.
You didn't make enough money. If you'd made 100 million, then we could have you could have forked out 5.
Raewyn regularly appeals to alumni to build something for us or buy something for us.
We were going to buy
This
it.
flows good into the next question. What would you have told yourself 20 years ago about the Icehouse journey, and is there anything you'd do differently? You'd buy the building.
The first thing I would have said is when you said yes to this, Chris, you made one of the best decisions of your life.
That's amazing.
I would if I could go back, that is the first thing. And I would say thank you to David for that, because he saw the potential that he hoped, Deb, to work with Deb. I mean, what a privilege to then work with Winnie over all of that time. The support that I just have to send a quick email if I'm up at uni and I need a guest speaker or I can't think of it. I just send it to Andy, and Andy goes, right, and it's all organised. And then the joy of, my summer program, I call it my summer program, working with Liz. So that the one thing I would have said is that's the best yes you've ever said from a work point of view.
I think I'd go with when you believe in something, and it starts to become really strong in your sense of opportunity and doing the right thing. I think you're at your greatest sort of moment to be bold. It might feel most unusual because you've got no experience in the execution and the performance of it. Yet the belief system is particularly strong. And I still think that today, I think boldness is something that we probably underscore. I'd probably, if I was an owner, I would be bolder than the Icehouse is. It is now really servicing people what it does very, very well. But I would have said to people at the beginning, it's time to be bold. And I would have pushed the bold.
And you would have we would have owned Australia.
Yeah, I reckon.
Rather than partner. And we've got a great partner in Australia.
Yeah, well, and we're talking equity now, which is great. So that's a difference, and I think that's from the encouragement that continues to come from you, David, around being bold. Always from you, bold. Always.
But we could have always been bolder.
Yeah, but you're right.
Should we put capital? Should we have an Icehouse? Should we have had an Icehouse investment fund for owner managers?
SME fund.
Andy, I reckon the Stanford thing. We imagined this was a Stanford for owner managers. Stanford raises money from capital. You need to be able to put your name somewhere. This is it. We should own this. Perhaps we should own this, or something like that. And so there's a site that is ours, and we have been here for nearly all of our life. All of it.
It's that university thing around endowments, and that's what we see all the time.
Actually, if I could have my time again, there's one thing I would have done.
Bought me a car.
Yeah.
Yay! Yay! It's not too late.
Do you know who you should talk to? Gavin. You should say the previous.
Got a car on the boat at the moment.
You should say the previous CEO promised me a car.
And guess what? I bought myself a new car. I've given up on you, mate.
What about you, Willie? What's...
I was very fortunate because at the time I was...
No, it's what you're going to change, lovey.
Oh, no. What am I going to change?
Just your reflection.
What would you change?
Anything you do differently.
Anything you do differently. Sell more?
What would I do differently? I don't know that I would. I don't know. I think, no, I don't. I'm really... to meet you and Deb back then and to be involved for all those time has truly been a privilege. And then, of course, Liz and I don't even know about this guy. He's so rude. And David, this is all because of you, really, and others, it's just significant. So.
It's a good place to be. And for all of you, is there anything that exceeded expectations?
Everything.
Yeah.
20 years on. I mean, when you work at a university, you might work on a program for 2 or 3 years, on a course, and then you change into something else and something else. And, I was talking to colleagues today, and I've been working on the same program, and I know it's not the same program.
No.
That program for 20 years, and I have no plans to retire.
Now, Chris, if you think about that, the thing that moves me and moved me. It was cool when we won and got sales and we got contracts or we got government money and all that sort of stuff. But the thing that moved was when you would go to Wanaka or you'd go to Gisborne and you'd meet a builder or an owner or someone who'd gone from 3 to 30 to 100 million, or had got out of the shit and survived, and that's what moved me, was when you heard these self-made learning, applying stories of owners doing extraordinary things, and that made me go, this is actually, we're doing something that's important and meaningful. And now we've got kids coming. The children are going on the owner-manager program.
Yeah. And it almost at times makes you feel uncomfortable that they attribute that to the Icehouse. And yet at the same time, or some of that, when someone says you changed my life and you changed my business, it almost makes you feel a little uncomfortable. But at the same time, there's just so much pride, in the privilege, in what you see as a result of what you do, and the privilege that you feel to be in their world.
And sometimes you think, because there's a number of people on a program, and you're not sure what kind of impact it's made, and but you enjoyed the journey, enjoyed working with them, and then you catch up with them 3 or 4 years later, and they run through everything they've done. And you just like, wow. It's just awesome.
And we're talking like it's not really hard work sometimes, and it's really hard work sometimes. And you put a lot of energy, into it. And but it's incredibly rewarding.
So we've talked a bit about how the Icehouse has impacted others, but also how has the Icehouse impacted you personally? I love what you said, Chris, where you're like, if you were to go back, it's like, this is the best decision you've ever made.
I think for me, one of the things I love about being involved in the owner-manager program, being involved in the Icehouse, and being at the uni is this idea of theory and practice. So what we've, and there's nothing so practical as a good theory. So to be able to share what I know at uni, but then to learn from the owner managers, and to be able to take that back and to share with undergraduates or with an MBA class. So I think it's being able to combine those two things that, I love learning. And, a kaiako, if you think about that, is often translated from te reo Māori as a teacher, but another way of thinking about that is somebody that practices learning, which kind of comes back to your point, David. So I've had this wonderful opportunity to learn, from uni, from owner managers, and that's just amazing.
Yeah,
so fortunate.
Amazing. Yeah, that's cool.
If somebody had said to me, would you be, I didn't even think I was going to be in this country for more than 2 years, but if somebody had said to me, do you see yourself working for an organization for 15 years? I was like, no way. But I just think when you look out and think, where could I do what I can do here? I'm not sure that there's a place. And then
there's actually very, very few organisations in the world that get the opportunity to engage with the owners of these types of businesses and the richness, because I think the greatest gift I've been given from the Icehouse is the ability to understand the circumstance of an owner and of a family in a business and a founder, and to look into their soul and not judge them, but we actually understand what it's like for them, what they're going through, and what their journey might be. That doesn't mean we know how they're going to succeed or not, but that's actually the privilege when you are engaging with people at the edge. That's, for me, the greatest gift I've had is understanding those people and their circumstance. Right?
And when you work for someone for as long as I worked for Andy, and you work for someone who's got that feeling and sense of, what he just expressed, and the passion and the ability to challenge when you need to be challenged, again, it keeps you going, and that's true.
And learning bad language from Raewyn.
For the other people in this room and the people that
she taught me how to swear.
Yeah, right. We had a swearing jar for a while, didn't we, for you?
I could have bought a new car with that.
That's brilliant.
Yeah, I think I've been fortunate to get it's been a sandpit for me. It's like, it really is an extremely fulfilling and happy. I've had 20 years of happiness, really.
Wow.
As a result of it, I'm so glad I found this place, the territory to get the opportunity. It's just been a joy.
I actually learned something from you. Do you know what I learned? How to buy more rubbers to deal with all of your pencil scrawlings over the years when you would write papers, and most people would use like track changes. Yours was on paper with pencil written, and I was like, I got to learn how to read your scrawling.
I'm not sure you would have used it much. But
I did, because I could get the rubber and then rub it out.
But every year, David, we sit down and David's, kind of reassessing where he wants to spend his time and his energy, and I get ready for that meeting and I just go in with my fingers and toes crossed going, I hope we'll still feature, and he wants, still playing in our sandpit.
yeah,
And we've got
very
so
lucky.
many people that give their time and energy to come in and work on the program.
It is
And
about
some great,
recognised
people like
generosity.
Amanda, Leon, Sven, some of these people just over and over again are so willing to come in and share.
Chris, they
give.
come in, many of them come in and they don't charge $1.
Yeah.
They're doing it on a voluntary basis. I think the panelists
Particularly
are
our
sort of on that
panelists.
basis, and
Yeah.
many of us are just doing it because you don't.
It's extraordinary.
It's
Actually, if you
meaningful.
think about the humans we've met, right, and who would know that Deb Sheperd and Andy Hamilton live next to each other? Who would know that Deb's
And they
greatest
share a
gift
dog.
greatest gift to me is Clarkie, like her husband, who's like one of my best friends. And it's a beautiful thing when we think about the Amanda Flemings, we think about the Svens, we think about all the panelists, right? I love it. So good.
And to your point earlier, Chris, you call, you can ring up and say, oh, I need a guest speaker, I need a panelist, whatever. Andy has been out of the CEO role for about a year and a half now.
Yeah.
And yet I must get 2 or 3 emails a week saying, here's somebody else Liz, that you should look at as a panelist, or you should look at as a guest speaker, or,
He's out my LinkedIn.
I'm sorry about that. Yeah. Sorry about that.
connector. It's the connector piece.
Brilliant.
And I think David continues to do we could do this, or maybe we could do more of that, or have you ever thought about this, or it's just it's awesome. Anyway.
That's awesome. Moving into sort of the business landscape and the future, what's been the biggest change in the SME landscape in the last 20 years, and what stayed the same?
That's a really good question.
Is technology something? Resilience? I don't
Well,
know.
I one of my, again, from the very first owner-manager program, it was really hard. Some people had smartphones. Not everybody, of course, had them.
Right.
But you really couldn't get any kind of connection, with them. And that was on the first owner, the block. He came back on the second block, and our connection was bloody fantastic, because one of the guys was he had a Vodafone, was linked in with Vodafone, and he rang them up and he said, get your shit sorted. And there was some kind of receiver thingy there, so actually everybody had
Remember
really good
Greg
reception.
Tomlinson? He was doing business and he'd always have to send faxes. You probably don't
Yeah.
even know what a fax is.
So I think technology is an enabler, and obviously we've had technology businesses, kind of come in. That shift around understanding your why and your purpose, that's been something that has just, purpose and values. It's not to say that businesses didn't have that, but I think we have a more explicit conversation around that over the last
Well, do you know, if you think of it from
few years?
what you focus on is what you can influence, and I would say from our perspective, David's experience of going to Stanford, that changed his life for a corporate person. That the biggest shift for us in our SME world is the opportunity for owners to be able to invest in themselves and their future. I think that SME Land hasn't necessarily otherwise changed. It's always been there, but it's been a hidden part of the economy, right? Because government didn't engage, councils didn't engage. Yes, startup land has got bigger and bigger and bigger, but the owner-manager, it's always been a hidden world, because he or she or owners just go about and do their things. So I think maybe, if anything, that part of the market is formalised more, and they've become more and more, because they themselves didn't like to be called entrepreneurs,
Yeah.
right? Owners, yes. Entrepreneurs,
But they were, weren't they, at the time? They
Of
had
course
it.
they are.
Yeah, I agree, Andy. When you ask that question, it just feels rather like we're still the same sort of people. They've still got the same sort of issues. What was relevant back then has still got a lot of relevance today.
I think we see more trades owners
Yeah.
in our mix of owner-manager program.
Yes.
More builders, electricians, plumbers, and that's just a function of how much money has been made out of infrastructure in New Zealand.
Equally more of the professional services type organisations, so doctors, advisors, those sorts of people. We're seeing more of those.
And each group is completely different, but each group is so much the same, in the best sense of what that means, that down to earth, that making things happen, that open and willing to engage.
And they get in the room and they get such a sense of relief that where they might have come in thinking they're the only one that's dealing with this or feeling this or having
Well, they
this
do
challenge.
think that.
Well, that's what I mean. They come in the room
No owner is an
feeling
island.
exactly
They all
that.
think they're isthmuses
until
themselves.
Until our, within the first hour, they're sitting there going, phew, I'm not the only one. And all of a sudden they're away. And it's the same in the groups in Aussie. They're Australians and, in that they might be slightly different, but the dynamic and nature of them is the same.
That what you say there is, I think the big shift over the last 20 years is that it's okay to feel isolated,
and vulnerable.
but you're not alone, because everyone else has the same situation, different industries, but same challenges, people, motivation.
I think one of if you think about the U Circle and our conversation around resilience and well-being, because that was quite an unusual conversation to have 20 years ago with owner managers. So I think that has shifted. Now it's not seen, that you're talking around physical, mental health, and there's a lot more head nodding around some of that. That we would have that on a program. So I think, on reflection, I think that has changed. It's still kind of a different take on it, to have that conversation in a business context. But I think, that would be one of that circle has shifted a bit.
Things like planning, which have always been important, but for back then, I don't recall it being such a central part of a manager's work in an SME. But I think that today there's a greater awareness of that type of conduct and behaviour.
And some of it's the disciplines of it, David, isn't it? So the planning, it's the discipline of needing to think about that.
Disciplined
That, and having those kind of systems and rhythms in place that means stuff that needs to happen happens.
Let alone getting a board.
Yeah.
Oh, that's something I don't miss after leaving, having a board. And I know most of the board members are like, thank fucking God he's gone.
Great part
All about self-awareness, Andy.
We're both lucky. Yeah, well, boards, we didn't talk about boards at the beginning, Chris, really, to any real extent, and it came in the course of it.
You changed the word from boards to governance,
Wisdom
and
and
then you
advice.
got wisdom.
Wisdom
And then they
advice.
got it, didn't they?
Yeah,
Once
they
you
did.
said wisdom, they loved it.
Yeah.
And it's how you frame that conversation for the owner manager.
And I think the other thing that changed, and I'm thinking of it because we're coming up to a block 3 this week, but was that we began to realize that before we got them to focus on growth, we needed to get them to focus on the current state of the business. So had they actually earned the right to grow? Because often the foundations aren't there, and so why should you be thinking about putting growth on top of that? And that's a shift for us.
Because the first few times where we had the business planning, we only had it in block 5. And it wasn't until 5 that we actually had this planning kind of day in block 3 as well as in block 5, and it kind of came about as that we'd have kind of informal conversations, but to have that explicit day.
And that theme has runs through our coaching, business. The coaches are all really, and advisors are all really focused on understanding the current state of the business and challenging around that before they think about what next. The leadership development program. So what's your opportunity to really make sure that, the kind of
And formalising the implementation day, the day 90 days later.
Yeah.
We to formalise, so that's paid for, locked in.
Yeah.
That's.
So a really interesting reflection and challenge, I think, that David has always had, and I think we haven't mentioned Jeff Witcher as well, but is to always, often you can become comfortable once you've been around a while and going, right, I don't need to push the boat out anymore.
Yeah.
But we always need to be continually going, what else, what next, how do we extend, what's new, not for the sake of it, just so that you've got momentum and you're also failing, because failing's a good thing.
I think that's for me. That's I hope that I will be there for the next 20 years. But if I become
How
too
old will
comfortable,
you be in 20 years? Oh, sorry.
just still a spring chicken. If I've become comfortable and because here we've got this program and it kind of rolls out. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. But you got to keep nothing wrong with it versus everything right with it from
It is a good thing from the Icehouse. There's no forced retirement age at the Icehouse. Even for you, Lizzie.
So what are those?
I'll be 80 in 20 years. I can say that.
So what are those things that we you don't want to throw it out, but what are those things that I keep working on? Because I think that's it's a look in the mirror thing. What am I doing to ensure that I'm still relevant and keep it fresh?
Because I think Andy's point is really valid, and we say this. There's nothing wrong with failing, as long as you learn from it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
This is a brilliant segue to what excites you most about the future.
For me, because obviously I came in and I saw Liz, so I finished a program in June, and my next one rolls out pretty much the beginning of October, but it's really the last day of September. So I could come in and say to Liz, we're on another program next month. And I think what I look forward to is, it's normally about 8:30, 8:45 on a Thursday, driving out, and I'm normally talking to my mum as I head out, and I'm so excited about meeting 25 people.
Yeah.
And so I go out and we have this great block, and then on the Saturday afternoon I drive home and I talk to my mum again, and Mum goes, so who was on the program, darling? And I go, well, we've got, and just that sheer joy of working on a program with somebody you love working with, having people come in on the program that you love hearing from, and just that joy of just working on another program. And I always, because the moment I walk into a program, and I can remember actually there was one program quite a while ago, it was in the mid-20s, and it didn't quite work, and I remember thinking, okay, I've worked on for 9 or 10 years, maybe that, but actually I then went on to the next program and was like, don't be bloody ridiculous, this is bloody awesome, and off I went again. So it's just that sheer,
Awesome. Love that. And it beams from you, it really does. Everyone.
I think my sense of really what we've created here, enabled, is that there's just absolutely no reason that this institution or this purpose that we've got won't last 100 years, 200 years, 300 years. I think we're forever. The Icehouse and what it does is forever, because it's a place of learning, enablement, and it cares, and there's that group. It knows its audience pretty well. So it should endure. It just needs constant energy of the right people to do that.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Winnie? Raewyn, camp mother.
What I love about being involved in this and for all this period of time is all about the people, and all about the stories and what I hear and what people share and how open and the stuff they tell you, which is pretty cool. One of the things which I was quite delighted with, we've got Blair McPherson. He's the cousin of Duncan.
Duncan McFarlane.
Yes, McFarlane, sorry. And he's just gotten engaged to Beth from Forest Wine, so
I
they're
know.
both alumni.
We should.
Yeah.
That's another one we could do about inter-program marriages.
So then I got a call from an email from Blair. He said, I'm sitting with Beth, we're having a drink and we really think you should be there for our wedding, so will you block out February to come and be there for their wedding? So I thought, isn't that cool? Two people you've met on a program.
But
so,
that is
That's so
the
really
essence of Raewyn.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Like,
It describes it perfectly.
You cannot. I don't know if there's a single solitary other organization in the world that has someone working in it that has met and knows every single customer that we've ever had.
I'm getting a lot older and they're getting a lot younger.
Yeah. And it takes us a little while. We get the last name wrong every once in a while, but it doesn't matter. But going to someone's wedding, like
it's pretty
that's
cool.
just.
But this is it's having people that are the glue in an organisation. That we're all able to come. Well, I come in and out, and Deb. But Raewyn, when he's at the back of the room, got everything set up, or
Well, and Bryar knows all about it, having come into the organisation about a year ago, not quite, and doing the role that that you're doing, Bryar. Raewyn embracing you and you embracing Raewyn was going to be really important if this was going to work, and yet. It's like who do we know that's in this industry that's here, Raewyn? And Raewyn's like this person, this person, this person, this person. You know what I mean? It's
brilliant. It's an actual
Raewyn. Raewyn is the one person where you don't want Raewyn's emails to go into spam.
Yes.
She is just the linchpin there.
Yeah. What are you excited about when you look ahead, Lizzie?
And I'm going to add to that question for you, Liz, as well. What does the future of the Icehouse look like? What would it look like in 20 years?
Oh gosh, it's something we're kind of grappling with now, and I just take the essence of what David just said.
Can you get on with it?
Yeah. I look forward to not having him sitting next to me.
Just tell us when you've done it. I'd like to be able to watch it.
But we had a board last year who said, rather than hunker down when this could be a little challenging, be bold, and I think we were. Now they're saying the same thing again. So do these two people say this to me all the time?
Just get on with it.
Get on with it. Be bold. It's got to be exciting. And I guess for me, success continues to be measured by the impact that we have on the people that we work with. Yeah. If that means we're a bigger business from a revenue perspective, great. If that means we're doing a whole bunch of things that we weren't doing because that enables us to have a greater impact, great. Mm-hmm. Who's in the business? We've seen it this year, and in terms of some changes we made and bringing some,
We've
some
got
new
staff
roles in,
out of Auckland.
And we've got people that are not in Auckland. I mean, we have been 7 years in Hawke's Bay, actually maybe 8. Now Bay of Plenty, Christchurch, Hamilton.
So good.
It's really cool.
It is really cool.
So I guess I just get excited at the opportunity for us to continue to do what we do. And to do more stuff so that we can, impact more and more owner managers.
I remember using was saturate, New Zealand. And I was dreadful at the beginning at sort of looking internationally. But I wasn't dreadful, I was just what I was. But people were right to say, really work for you're here for New Zealand. Yeah. And that was right. But as we grow, I'm global citizens, and I actually like the idea of Icehouse, like lighthouses around the world. Actually, I would not put that out of my.
Well, and that's a funny thing, right? Who chose that name?
I did.
We know where it came from.
Yeah, I know exactly where it came from. You say after me, Institute for Entrepreneurship, 10 times an hour for 6 weeks, and you go, ugh.
I thought it was the
International Centre for Entrepreneurship.
Yes, originally it was the Institute. Remember the guy Kerr, Don Kerr?
Oh yes, we do.
But that's like when you came back and said, because you'd announced that we were going to, this whole, if New Zealand needs however many businesses of. but you called them internationally capable, competitive, and successful. I'm like,
What a-
we're certainly not going to be saying that.
Must
for
be
very
some
long.
consultant that told me. It's a really interesting thing. It is. I remember saying Institute for Entrepreneurship so many times in the first 6 weeks. And I was
Wasn't
like,
gonna
just,
go.
I said to Design Works, that'll do, just give us that name. We'll make it into something we want it to be. And that's what it's about.
Great.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Having it as the Icehouse to create that brand.
Better than assholes.
Did you think about that?
And moving along. But I think David's point about it could not have sat in the university
No.
because we would have
No.
bored it to tears.
But,
Kind of.
but we
to
did
be
spend a
at
lot
that.
of wasn't when I joined, I think it was, the idea was, it's, there was a natural tension sitting outside the university because we were like the misbehaving child sometimes, and it's worked so well for
Well, we're very lucky
for 20 years
that they gave us the opportunity
freedom.
to do that.
the freedom.
And I actually think the next 20 years are about more of the same, challenging, pushing boundaries, and also I suspect really unlocking and considering how we can bring benefits back into the ecosystem. I mean, maybe more research, maybe more publications, maybe more depth with owners, and we have to do new things and push new things, which might include capital, might include more expansion into Australia.
And working with around the thought leadership,
Yeah.
that can contribute into into
Reputation,
Aotearoa New Zealand. I think that's
Yeah, and I think, like, we encourage owners to think about more than maybe we didn't in the past. The idea of collaboration and partnering, and we've had great partners for all of our journey, but I think the essence of that changes a little bit now as we think about not going it alone. When you talk international, that's where that takes me.
Well, we have a name now, we have a reputation, so we have a real platform to continue to launch ourselves where we think fit. So we're in a good place.
And it's special because I'm sitting here and I just feel so honoured to have hosted this conversation, although limited hosting needed. But everyone's passion is so aligned, and I think that's so important, and that's why 20 years on, we're sitting on these couches, because your purpose and your passion for this is so, it's so aligned. And so I just wanted to thank you guys so much for this conversation, but also for the contribution for the last 20 years. Like, that's so significant, and it's so nice to be able to sit here and mark the milestone. And there are some people missing that we'd like to be sitting on these couches with us, and so we need to acknowledge that. But thank you for just sitting here and reminiscing and having some fun and having some laughs. I wouldn't expect anything less. And for all of those listening and watching, we just want to thank you so much, and thanks for tuning in to our podcast 20th anniversary special.